The night stretched endlessly across the Montana plains, painted in shades of deep indigo and restless silver. A storm brewed far to the west, its low thunder echoing through the open land. Ethan Cole leaned against the barn's wooden frame, wiping the sweat and dust from his brow. He'd been mending fences since sunrise, his muscles aching, his mind silent, until that whisper of wind carried something he hadn't felt in years: unease. It wasn't the kind that came before rain. It was something else. Something alive. The horses in the stable stirred restlessly, their hooves clattering against the floorboards. Ethan frowned. He'd spent enough nights out here to know when nature was warning him of something. He set his hat down, his boots crunching softly on the hay-strewn floor as he checked the stalls one by one. The lantern's glow flickered weakly, casting long, wavering shadows on the wooden walls. Then he heard it. A voice, soft, trembling, and achingly familiar. "Ethan, help me." He froze. The sound hit him like a bullet. It couldn't be. It had been years, 5, maybe 6, since he'd heard that voice. Years since he'd buried those memories beneath work and whiskey and empty nights. Slowly, his heart pounding, he turned toward the open barn doors. She stood there in the rain. Claire Bennett. Her clothes clung to her skin, drenched from the storm. Her long hair hung in dark waves over her shoulders, and her wide eyes, those same green eyes that used to undo him, were filled with fear. Her lips trembled as she stepped closer, her boots sinking slightly in the muddy ground. "Claire," he said, his voice hoarse. "What in God's name are you doing here?" She swallowed, rain dripping from her lashes. I didn't know where else to go." Ethan took a step back, disbelief hardening into anger. "You shouldn't be here." "I know," she said, her voice cracking. "But I need your help. Please." He stared at her, every muscle tense. Memories flooded back, her laughter echoing in the pasture, the nights under the stars, the warmth of her touch. And then, the emptiness. The note that never came. The silence that stretched for years. "You left," he said finally, his voice low. "You didn't just leave me, Claire, you disappeared." Her lips parted, but no words came out. She looked down, her shoulders shaking. "I know. And I'm sorry. But I didn't have a choice." He clenched his fists. "There's always a choice." She took another step forward, her voice trembling. "Not when your life's in danger." That stopped him cold. He looked at her, really looked, and saw it then. The faint bruise near her jaw. The way she kept glancing toward the dark fields behind her, as if expecting someone to appear. "Who's after you?" he asked. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "A man named Carter Dane. I worked for him after I left. He's not who he pretends to be. He's dangerous." Ethan's eyes darkened. "And you brought him here?" She shook her head quickly, panic flashing in her gaze. No, he doesn't know where I am. I drove straight here, no stops. I swear it." For a moment, only the sound of rain filled the space between them. Ethan ran a rough hand through his hair, torn between reason and instinct. Every part of him screamed to send her away, to protect himself from the pain she'd already caused once. But another part, buried deep and still bleeding, couldn't turn her out into the storm. Finally, he sighed and grabbed his jacket from the hook, tossing it around her shoulders. "You can stay in the barn tonight. The guest room's full of tools and feed, so this'll have to do." Claire's eyes shimmered with relief. "Thank you, Ethan." He didn't reply. He turned back toward the stalls, trying to focus on anything else, the creak of wood, the flicker of lantern light, the sound of her quiet breathing behind him. But it was impossible. Every time she moved, every time she spoke, he felt the years between them melt away and the old ache return. When she finally sat down on a bale of hay, shivering beneath his jacket, he caught her eyes once more. There was something haunting in them, a mix of fear, regret, and something that hadn't died. The thunder rolled again, closer this time. Lightning flashed, lighting up her face in a ghostly glow. "Ethan," she said softly, almost afraid to speak. "I didn't just come here for help. I came because you're the only person I ever truly trusted." He felt his chest tighten, his breath shallow. Trust. That word burned more than it healed. Outside, the wind howled across the plains, bending the grass and rattling the barn doors. Inside, beneath the flickering lantern, two hearts stood still, one running from the past, the other chained to it. And as the first drops of a new storm began to fall, Ethan realized something he hadn't in years: this night wasn't just a reunion. It was the beginning of something neither of them could escape. The storm outside had gathered its full strength, roaring like an untamed beast across the Montana plains. Rain battered the barn roof with relentless fury, thunder rolling through the distance like a warning. Inside, the world was still, except for the sound of crackling fire and the slow, uneven rhythm of two hearts trying to remember how to breathe around each other. Ethan Cole tossed another log into the fire, his face lit with flickering amber light. The shadows danced across his rugged features, the strong jaw, the stubble dusted over sun-browned skin, the eyes that had once softened for only one woman. Now, those same eyes looked hard and unreadable as they lingered on Claire. She sat a few feet away, curled in his flannel jacket, her hands trembling around a tin mug of coffee he'd given her. The warmth helped, but not much. The chill she felt came from something deeper, fear, guilt, and the weight of everything she had never told him. "So," Ethan finally said, his voice rough as gravel, "you gonna tell me what you're really running from?" Claire hesitated, staring into the fire. The orange glow reflected in her eyes, and when she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "A man named Carter Dane. I worked for him in Wyoming after I left. At first, he seemed like a good man, kind, powerful, respected. But behind closed doors," she trailed off, her voice breaking. Ethan's grip tightened around his mug. "He hurt you?" She nodded slightly. "Not at first. It started small, control, lies, manipulation. Then, when I tried to leave, he showed me who he really was. He has money, men, connections everywhere. When he wants something, he takes it. And what he wants now, is me." Ethan's jaw clenched. He stood up suddenly, pacing the dirt floor, his boots thudding heavily. "So you thought running here was smart? Bringing that kind of danger to my ranch?" Tears welled up in her eyes. "I didn't think. I panicked. When I was driving with nowhere to go, I thought of you." He turned sharply, eyes burning. "You thought of me, after vanishing without a word. I know I don't deserve your help," she said, her voice trembling. "But I didn't come here to hurt you again. I came because I trust you, Ethan. You're the only one I ever have." He stopped, his breath catching at her words. Trust. It was the same word she'd used years ago, right before she'd left him standing under the same stormy sky, waiting for answers that never came. "Don't use that word with me," he said quietly. "Not after everything." Claire looked up at him, her eyes glistening. "You think I wanted to leave? You think I wanted to break you? You did." "No," she whispered. "I was scared. Not of you, of him. Carter wasn't always who he pretended to be. I tried to run before, and he found me. He said if I ever went back to you, he'd." A flash of lightning cut across the sky, followed by a deafening crash of thunder. The horses neighed nervously in their stalls. Ethan grabbed her shoulders gently but firmly. "He'd what?" She looked up at him, tears spilling freely now. "He said he'd kill you." Ethan's heart dropped like a stone. He let go of her slowly, taking a step back. "So that's why you disappeared." She nodded. "I thought leaving you was the only way to save you." The storm roared outside, but the silence inside the barn was louder. Ethan turned away, running a hand through his damp hair. He wanted to be angry, to yell, to make her understand the years of loneliness, but the truth was, he couldn't. Every ounce of rage was swallowed by something stronger, the old, familiar pull that had never left him. A distant sound broke the silence, a faint hum, mechanical, growing louder. Headlights suddenly sliced through the sheets of rain. A car was approaching the ranch. Ethan's body stiffened. Claire's face went white. "He found me," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Oh God, he found me." Ethan's instincts kicked in. He grabbed his rifle from the corner, blew out the lantern, and motioned for her to get down. "Stay low. Don't move unless I tell you." They crouched behind a stack of hay bales, breaths shallow, the sound of rain and the slow crunch of tires filling the air. The car engine idled just outside the barn. Ethan peered through a crack in the wood. A dark SUV sat there, headlights cutting through the rain, but no one got out. Seconds stretched into minutes. Then, just as suddenly, the engine revved and drove off into the night. Ethan exhaled slowly, lowering his gun. He's gone. For now. Claire's knees gave out, and she sank onto the dirt floor, shaking. Ethan knelt beside her, his voice softer now. "You're safe. We'll figure this out." She looked up at him, tears mixing with rain on her cheeks. "I shouldn't have come. You shouldn't have to risk your life for me. He met her gaze, eyes dark and fierce. I don't care about what I should do. You're here. That's all that matters. And then, before either of them could think, he reached for her, his rough hands cradling her face, his breath mingling with hers. Ethan, she whispered, voice trembling with fear and need. Help me, claim me tonight. Those words broke something inside him. The years of pain, anger, and distance melted in an instant. The storm outside raged, lightning spilling across the fields, but inside that barn, another storm had begun, wilder, deeper, unstoppable. And when he finally kissed her, it wasn't just passion. It was every word they'd never said, every moment they'd lost, every promise they still couldn't let die. Morning came slow over the Montana plains. The storm had passed, leaving behind a world washed clean. The air smelled of wet earth and pine, and faint streams of sunlight filtered through the cracks in the barn's old boards, landing on two figures wrapped in silence and tangled emotions. Ethan stirred first. His back ached from the rough barn floor, but it wasn't the ache of regret, it was something heavier, deeper. Claire lay beside him, her head resting lightly against his arm, her hair spilling across his chest like gold threads catching the morning light. For a long moment, he just looked at her, memorizing the calm in her face, the same face that had haunted his dreams for years. Last night replayed in his mind like a fevered dream, the thunder, the fear, the closeness, her trembling voice whispering his name. He told himself it was wrong, that they were both caught up in danger and memory. But as the warmth of her touch lingered, he knew there was no undoing it. Something had shifted forever. Claire's eyelids fluttered open slowly. When her gaze met his, she gave a faint, sleepy smile. You stayed, she murmured. He gave a small laugh, rough from exhaustion. It's my barn, Claire. Didn't have far to go. She smiled a little wider. You know that's not what I meant. He looked away, the words catching somewhere deep in his chest. You needed someone to keep watch. That's all. But even as he said it, he didn't believe it. Claire sat up, pulling his jacket tighter around herself. The sunlight traced the curve of her face, soft and warm. I didn't mean for any of this to happen, she said quietly. Coming back here, bringing danger to your doorstep, I just didn't know where else to go. Ethan sat up beside her, resting his elbows on his knees. You should have called. You could have warned me. She shook her head. Carter has people listening, watching. I didn't want to risk it. He sighed, rubbing his temples. You think he's still coming? I know he is, she whispered. He always finds what he wants. Ethan's eyes hardened, the protective instinct that had always defined him coming alive again. Not this time, not here. For a long while, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the steady drip of rainwater from the roof and the faint nickering of the horses outside. The quiet was almost peaceful, but beneath it, something unspoken lingered. Finally, Claire turned toward him. Do you regret it? Last night. The question hung between them like a blade. Ethan looked at her, his face unreadable. He thought of the years of loneliness, the empty nights he'd spent wishing he could forget her. He thought of how, despite everything, the moment she'd said his name, it all came rushing back, the love, the anger, the need. He exhaled slowly. No, he said finally. I don't regret it, but I don't know what it means either. Tears welled in her eyes, though she tried to blink them away. It means I still love you, Ethan. That I never stopped. He froze, her words hitting harder than any storm. You don't get to say that now, he said, though his voice softened as he spoke. You had your chance. I know, she whispered. But I thought I was saving your life. And when I realized what I'd lost, it was too late. I've been running ever since, from him, from myself, from everything but you. Ethan looked away, jaw tight. You can't keep running. You'll have to face him eventually. I'm scared, she admitted. Good, he said. Fear means you've got something to fight for. A faint sound outside made them both turn. Hooves on gravel, slow and steady. Ethan stood quickly, grabbing his rifle from the post. He stepped toward the barn door, peering out cautiously. It was only Joe, his ranch hand, riding up the dirt path. Relief washed over him. Joe tipped his hat when he spotted Ethan. Storms cleared. Fence down by the south pasture, he called out. You all right, boss? Ethan nodded. Yeah, fine. When Joe rode off, Ethan turned back to Claire. She stood there watching him, eyes uncertain but full of something fierce, something that hadn't been there last night. What happens now? she asked softly. He walked toward her, setting the rifle aside. Now, we make a plan. I've got friends in Billings, lawmen who owe me favors. We'll get word out, make sure Dane can't touch you again. She shook her head. You'd do that? After everything I put you through. He met her gaze, steady and sure. You didn't just walk into my life, Claire. You became part of it. That doesn't go away, no matter how much I tried to pretend. Her eyes shimmered with tears. Ethan. He stepped closer, brushing a thumb across her cheek. You came here broken, but you're safe now. As long as I'm breathing, nobody's gonna lay a hand on you. Claire's breath hitched. She leaned into his touch, closing her eyes for a moment that felt suspended in time. Outside, the wind had gone still. The sky stretched wide and endless, painted gold by the morning sun. When she opened her eyes again, she smiled faintly through her tears. I don't deserve you. Maybe not, he said, a small grin tugging at the corner of his mouth. But I'm yours anyway. They stood there in the soft light, two souls weathered by time, by love, by everything they'd lost, and everything they'd just begun to find again. The storm had come and gone, leaving destruction and clarity in its wake. But the night they'd shared would stay with them always, a night of truth, forgiveness, and the kind of love that never truly dies. And as the sun rose higher over the plains, Ethan took her hand in his, knowing that whatever came next, they'd face it together.